Hello everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack. As part of my cheap luxury car series, I have had a year 2000 S500, a W220, which I bought on eBay for £900. That was followed by a Lexus LS400, bought for £850. After that, I went a bit more expensive and got a Jaguar XK for £6,000. That was a brilliant car, so much car for the money. It was a 2007. That was followed by a Bentley GT, a 12-cylinder monster that scared me absolutely to the core with potential bills. And then the last one, Reggie, my Jaguar XJR, my X308 series XJR, which was brilliant, but which I lost a fair bit of money on. My latest purchase was originally an £80,000 car, and I got it for just £500. It does look really tidy and it is a good car, but it did have one big problem. The ABC suspension light was on. Now this is essentially the coupe version of the very first luxobarge that I had, the Bismarck, that W220 S500. Where the S500 though has air suspension, which already tends to worry people a little bit, this has the fearsome ABC hydraulic suspension system, which when working properly is a really impressive engineering feat. But when it goes wrong, its ability to drain your wallet is absolutely legendary. It turned out that the problem with this one was that the suspension pump had failed. Now, ordinarily, if you're going to get that replaced, you can't buy one new from Mercedes. They don't make them anymore. You have to buy a recondition pump. The price for that fitted is usually about £1,500. But I was really lucky. I had a post on a Facebook group just asking for clarification on what could go wrong when you had that light on. And Mark contacted me and said, look, I'm a retired mechanic. I can do these in my sleep. I do them all the time. And because I don't have premises and so on, I can do it cheaper than a normal garage. And he offered to do the job for £940 all in. That includes replacing the pump itself, all the fluid, and the various gaskets and O-rings that are involved with this. It turns out that not only was the pump failing, but it was actually leaking as well. So that explains why, when I first went to have a look at this car, I found a little puddle of fluid underneath it, which is something that quite concerned me as a time, which could have been an additional problem. I was really pleased with what he did. I mean, I took a bit of a gamble because essentially I didn't really know of him. I didn't know who he was, but I figured the car was worth, so well, I'd paid so little for it that I was willing to just take a shot with someone who was untested. It turns out he was absolutely great to deal with. He did a brilliant job. He didn't know I was a YouTuber, so no preferential treatment. I really recommend him if you need any work of this kind doing on your Merc. So all in all now, this car owes me £1,440, which is still absolutely fantastic. I had a look on eBay and I think these seem to go for, in this condition, for between sort of £3,000 and £4,000. So it could be that for once, I've actually done well. Let's find out, because I'm going to take it to Mercedes now, see what they think, see what they say is wrong with it, how much I need to spend to fix anything outstanding. And also I've asked them to give me a value for it if I was to part exchange it against a new car. Right, well that took about an hour and a half, but that's done now and I have the report, and it is shocking, but not in the ways that I was expecting. Let me quickly explain to you how these free checkups work. Essentially, the dealerships will bring you in, look over your car in the hope that they can find something that they can then charge you to fix. Now, most main dealers now are owned by big groups. In this case, it's the Sytner Group that runs it. Let's find somewhere quiet, we'll have a look at the report and see what they found. There is one thing that I know isn't quite right with this car, and that is that rear boot. So it doesn't shut flush and it's very stiff to push down to close. So I asked them to look into that and let me know if it's just a question of adjustment or something's broken or whatever, and they didn't look at that at all. So that's not a great start. But the other thing is, looking at this sheet, I've never really seen one quite like it, because if we go through the first things that are going on, they check all the main things like the interior, all the buttons, you know, all that kind of stuff, seat belts, washers, horn, brake fluid level, battery, coolant level, engine oil level, V-belt, the tensions, conditions, and that's all absolutely fine. First shock. Then the second thing, with these tests, obviously, they do some stuff which to me is a complete waste of time, and that is things like checking tyres, brake pads, discs. I understand for the average person maybe it's useful, but for me not really, because I already know that they are all fine. I'd already checked those out, and indeed they're all matching Nexans all round with about 7mm of tread, so they're pretty new, pretty fresh. All the lights are good, the brakes, the pads, the wear, 8mm on all the pads, so that's all great. And then we go down to under the vehicle, but there is stuff coming up, so don't worry. The steering wear is all good, suspension wear and condition is all good, and drive shafts, all that stuff, all comes clear. The first thing that they do point out, basically the front under trays on this car are missing. Not a massive deal, and even if you were to go through Mercedes itself to get them replaced, £314, I'm sure from a breakers or something I can do it for an absolute fraction of that. They're probably important for aerodynamics, I don't know. I'll be looking at getting some replacements, but it will be a fraction of the £300. Then they say that there is a leak at the bottom of the engine. Now, if you'll remember earlier that the ABC pump was leaking, when Mark did the job afterwards, he told me there was oil, ABC suspension oil, all over the bottom of that engine. I did my best to clear it out, but if you see any drops of oil under the car for the first few days or whatever, that's still just oil that's accumulated and will be sort of going down. So I am fairly sure that that oil leak that they're talking about is nothing more than that. It just looks a little bit damp, but we'll see over time. But they wanted for that basically an hour's labour to investigate further, which is £178. I don't know since when labour rates have got to those incredible levels, but I was slightly shocked by that. But I guess it's a main dealer Mercedes price. Then the next thing they found is the transmission sump is corroded. Now this is a real, again, bit of a waste of time, I think, because yeah, it's not, you know, this is a car from 2003. It's got some surface corrosion. It's not about to leak. But if I was to replace that, that'd be £444. To be fair to them, that has been put as an amber thing. There's green, amber, which means you should maybe look at it at some point, and then red, which is immediately look at. Then there's one thing which is more interesting to me, and they say they have found play in both of the front camber arms on the ball joints. On these cars, I don't know, you guys can tell me, can you just replace the ball joint, or do you have to replace the whole arm? I think you can just replace the ball joint, and I think that they are actually bolted in, these, rather than pressure fitted. But anyway, if I was to do that through Mercedes, that would be £1,342. I'm not sure if these include VAT or not. I would hope that it would. That's one of the big costs. I'm sure it can be done cheaper through an independent, and I'm going to be exploring that option. I'm also going to be checking that they really do need doing, because I'm fairly sure I saw the video that they sent in terms of what they had looked at the car, and I don't think they could have spent more than 5 minutes on it, and he couldn't show the camber arms moving. I know that's possible sometimes as the suspension isn't under tension, but then I don't know how he would have seen it. Because of its age, they didn't give me a valuation, but I instead went on to WeBuyAnyCar.com, put this into their system, and I was curious to see how much they would pay me for it. They've come up with a valuation of £1,500, which all in all, I'm pretty pleased with. I think if they come up with £1,500, it must mean it is really at least £2,500, this car. And it is so amazing to drive. I've got no intention of selling it right now anyway. I definitely want to keep it for a bit longer, maybe look at those ball joints if it turns out that they need doing. Wow, I'm a little bit stunned, to be quite honest with you. I don't think I've ever had such a low quote when I've brought one of my trashy luxury barges to any of the main manufacturers. So altogether, it's about, even if I was to take it to Mercedes, the only thing that really needs doing is the ball joints on those camber arms, which is £1,400. And even if I was to get the under tray straight from Mercedes, the overall bill would still be less than £1,700. So super, super cheap, considering that this has been taken to a main dealer. Maybe it means that I finally bought a good car. Thank you so much, Jeremy, who is the viewer who sold it to me. I think you've been true to your word. He told me it was a good car. He's obviously had a bit of bad luck with it. The pump failed literally a day before he was going to bring it to me, and I was then going to pay £2,000 for it. So all in all, I've probably had a little bit of luck, although quite a bit of extra hassle getting it all organised. I have coming up a test between this and the car it's replacing. Reggie, my lovely cherished XJR, who is on his way to pastures new. And I'm going to be comparing this as well to one of the more modern CLs. Incidentally, if you have one of those, do get in touch with me and we can put something together. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you for the next video. Don't be too disheartened, because I'm very sure that over the next few months, this will be causing me several headaches. It's just a matter of time.